When the world goes quiet, some voices still remain. Not every soul finds peace when the clock strikes 12. There are stories hidden in the shadows, whispers drifting between the living and the forgotten. Some stories linger, some souls don't leave. Welcome to Stillness After Midnight, where every silence tells a story. If you're drawn to the mysteries that stir after dark, the voices that echo when the world sleeps, subscribe now and join us as we listen to the souls who still have something to say, because in the stillness, the truth finally speaks. Have you ever heard the sound of a factory exploding? Not once, like in the movies. Not with sirens, screams, and slow-motion heroics, but endlessly, over and over again. The same explosion, the same fire, the same sensation of heat peeling your skin, of steel shattering bones, of your voice breaking into a scream just before your lungs collapse, and then silence. And then it starts all over again. I am Elias Granger. I was once the CEO of Alaris Biotech, name that once glittered across the skyline like some holy sigil of progress and innovation. I wore power like a tailored suit, confidence like a second skin, and now I wear soot and fire. Now I am the only living thing inside a machine that refuses to die. I live inside a factory that explodes every 13 minutes and 27 seconds. I have no watch, but I've counted the rhythm. My body knows the timing better than my mind does. It's not that the explosions kill me. Not really. Not anymore. Death would be a mercy. The first time it happened, I thought it was a dream. The heat was unbearable. There was this metallic, scream-like gears being forced to grind against themselves. Then the pressure, then the white light, then black. But I woke up. I always wake up. Back in the same hallway. Steel walls, rust-stained pipes overhead, fluorescent lights flickering in a broken Morse code. Only I seem cursed to hear. The second time it exploded, I screamed. The third time, I begged. The 10th time, I laughed like a madman. Now I just walk. There's no exit here. No staircase that leads to salvation. No fire escape. No buttons to press. No elevator down. Only halls and conveyor belts. Mechanical arms welding nothing to nothing. Sparks flying in strange choreography like dancers in hell. The machines don't make anything anymore. They just move. They just exist. And maybe that's the point. Maybe this isn't punishment for what I did, for what I let continue, for what I allowed to live, like this factory. There's a room I return to sometimes, room 4A. It's not locked, and it's always empty except for the table and the chair and the screen. The screen only shows one image, a list of names. The names don't scroll. They don't change, but I know them all. Because I signed the approval that led to every one of their deaths. I remember the first name that appeared. Isabel Cortez, 36, cardiac arrest linked to neural pulse malfunction, unit number 42B. It wasn't supposed to happen. The malfunction was microscopic, a signal delay in the implant, a 0.04% chance of cascade error in test environments. I remember how we worded the internal memo. No significant cause for market disruption. I remember the meeting in the glass conference room. I remember my voice saying, the risk is manageable. It wasn't malice. It was branding. It was strategy. It was silence. And now, I live inside that silence. Every time the explosion hits, I remember the exact temperature of the boardroom's air conditioning. I remember the smirk on the compliance officer's face. I remember the faint clink of coffee cups. I remember the way I leaned back, crossed my legs, and chose the company over the truth. And then the fire returns. It always finds me, no matter how deep in the factory I go. It surges from the walls. It boils the air in my throat. It lifts me off the ground. It eats me, but not completely. It lets just enough of me live to scream. Sometimes I think I see other people here. Shadows, shapes, ghosts. They don't speak. They don't move. They only stand in doorways and hallways, watching me. Sometimes I think they're the names on the screen. Sometimes I think they're parts of versions of myself I never let grow. Sometimes I think I've already gone mad, but madness would be relief. This isn't insanity. This is clarity, sharpened to a point. The worst part? No one sent me here. There was no trial, no headline, no camera catching me in handcuffs, no jury, no God. I vanished quietly, like a man stepping out of frame, and woke up here. I don't know if this place is hell, or if it's something worse, something personal. A purgatory built not by divine judgment, but by psychological precision. It knows me. It is me. I walk down a corridor and see my own words etched into the walls. Silence is safer than panic. We can update the firmware post-launch. Brand perception is our priority. Every phrase is a dagger. I once said these things. I once believed them. And now they echo back at me in a factory that won't let me forget. There's a speaker above one of the doors that crackles sometimes, always just before the explosion. A voice comes through, staticky, broken. Sometimes it says, "You knew." Other times, "You chose." And once, only once, it said, "You're still choosing." That one haunts me the most. Because maybe it's true. Even now, even here, I sometimes pretend the fire won't come. I sometimes walk slower. I sometimes look away from the names on the screen. I still choose silent. But something inside me is changing. Or dying. There's a part of me that used to calculate risk, to weigh loss against optics. That part of me still whispers, still tries to manage the narrative, even in hell. But another part, a quieter part, is beginning to scream. Not in fear, not in pain, but in memory. That part wants to say something I never let it say. And maybe, just maybe, that's why I keep waking up. Not because I'm cursed, but because there's still something I haven't confessed. Something I haven't looked at in full. Something waiting in the smoke. So I walk again. 13 minutes and 27 seconds. The steel creaks. The factory moans. The lights dim. And then the fire takes me. Again. It started with a number. A decimal so small it could vanish between blinks. A single dot, followed by 2 zeros, then the digits that killed them. 0, norm, 0 or 7%. That was the likelihood, they said. The margin of error. The chance minuscule, almost imaginary, that the neural implant would misfire, causing a chain reaction that the body couldn't recover from. Cascade failure of the sympathetic nervous system in isolated cases. No sustained pattern. All within industry norms. I remember reading those words aloud, holding the printed report like it was just another set of figures. I remember the analyst across from me nodding, her expression unreadable behind rimless glasses. And I remember the moment I placed the report down, the moment I made the decision, we were on the edge of something great. That was what I told myself. Elias Biotech was about to change medicine forever. Neural Pulse, our flagship implant, was designed to regulate heart rate, stress levels, and even mood by interfacing directly with the vagus nerve. A miracle in silicon and platinum. A small device no bigger than a sunflower seed inserted just below the collarbone. It would give users peace, clarity, control, and for the company, billions. The boardroom echoed with ambition. I can still hear it, like a hymn from another life. We're not just selling a device, we're selling the future, I said. And I believed it. God help me, I believed it. When the first failure happened, it was buried so fast even I missed it. A quiet internal memo, flagged non-critical. A woman in Ohio. She collapsed after her implant surged during a mild panic attack. Heart stopped. Autopsy inconclusive. We filed it. Moved on. 0.047%. It sounded like nothing. A whisper in a hurricane. But whispers can rot through steel when repeated enough. I remember the day Dr. Holden came into my office. She wasn't part of the executive team, just a quiet, detail-obsessed systems engineer with too much integrity for her own good. She placed her findings on my desk without a word. No introduction, no preamble, just data. Failure clusters, hidden patterns in rural installations, subtle irregularities in voltage stability across implant batches. It wasn't definitive, but it was there. "We need to pause distribution," she said. Her voice was calm, earnest, like someone asking you not to walk into traffic. I should have listened. Instead, I smiled. I tapped the papers gently. "It's not statistically significant," I said. She stared at me, and then she said something I never forgot. "You don't need statistics to recognize a pattern. You need a conscience." She left my office without another word. I didn't fire her. I didn't reprimand her. I just ignored her. Because that's easier, isn't it? To ignore the inconvenient, to defer, to let silence carry the burden of decision. We launched Phase 2 3 weeks later, a full-scale rollout, national distribution, 37,000 units implanted within the first quarter. The branding was flawless. We hired actors with warm smiles, lighting that made every commercial look like sunrise. The tagline? "Take back your rhythm." And people did. They trusted us. They trusted me. The deaths began slowly, one in Nebraska, another in Boston, a teenager in Arizona, always spaced, always different enough to make excuses plausible. Doctors scratched their heads, news outlets didn't connect the dots. But we had the data. Every week I read the reports. I saw the map filling with red pins. I saw the percentages hold steady at that beautiful damning number, 0.0047%. And I kept saying it like it meant something. Within the margin of error, well below the industry baseline, statistically negligible, but numbers can lie when you want them to. I remember the board meeting where everything could have changed. Dr. Holden presented again, this time with charts, case studies, testimonials from grieving families. Her voice cracked halfway through. She wasn't selling a position, she was pleading. One of the directors leaned toward me afterward. "Do you want to pull the product?" I paused. I looked around that room. Suits, stock options, smiles that only appeared during quarterly earnings reports. I looked back at the numbers. 0.047%. "No," I said. "Let's issue a firmware patch. Monitor the situation. Stay ahead of the narrative." I remember the nods. I remember the silence. No one argued, because when the leader speaks with confidence, others silence their doubts to match his tone. That was the gift I wielded. My voice didn't shout, it soothed. It made people believe that doing nothing was somehow doing something, and that's the most dangerous kind of leadership. There's a screen in the factory. Sometimes when the smoke clears, I find it glowing softly in the dark. And on that screen, one number flashes, 0.47%. Nothing else. No names, no dates, no context, just the number. Mocking me, I walk away every time, but it finds me again. No matter where I go in this mechanical nightmare, that number is waiting, like a mirror that reflects nothing but my rationalizations. People think evil comes with a scowl, a snarl, a knife. But sometimes it comes with a smile and a spreadsheet. Sometimes it wears a tailored suit and says, "We can save everyone." Sometimes it's a man who truly believes he's protecting the greater good. And that's what terrifies me most about who I was. I didn't think I was the villain. I thought I was the adult in the room. The factory explodes again. Heat licks my back. Screws fly past my head. Something sharp slices across my cheek. The fire roars in my ears like it wants to cleanse me, but it never finishes the job. I wake up on the floor, coughing smoke, eyes stinging, and in my ears I hear the voice again, the same voice from the speaker above the rusted door. Only this time, it says something new. What did 0.07% mean to them? And I can answer, because I never asked. There's a room I don't like to enter. It's not locked. No doors here are locked. That would be too kind. This room has no number, no markings, Just a soft glow behind a steel door that hisses when I touch it. Inside, it's cold. Not from temperature, but from presence, like the absence of something essential. There's only one thing in the room, a wall of names, not etched, not printed. They float, rows and rows of names, suspended in the air like mist, like breath caught in winter light. They don't move, they don't speak, they don't accuse, but they don't go away. I didn't want to know them. It's easier that way when you're managing risk, adjusting timelines, moving product. Easier to let them remain anonymous. Just statistical casualties, an unfortunate but expected side effect. But once you know their names, you can't forget them. Isabel Cortez, 36, Cincinnati, Ohio. Michael Downs, 15, Flagstaff, Arizona. Jillian Wu, 42, San Jose, California. Omar Reyes, 67, Brooklyn, New York. Tasha Glenn, 29, New Orleans, Louisiana. Daniel Bloom, 10, Chicago, Illinois. They just keep coming. The room is endless. Each name floats alone, but when I step closer, more appear behind them. Layers. Like grief itself, always more than it seems at first glance. I don't know what's worse, that I signed off on the product that killed them, or that I didn't care enough to ask who they were while they were still alive. I used to think there was nobility in emotional distance. They told us in leadership seminars that empathy was a liability, that strong leaders make clean decisions, not compassionate ones. But now I can't even say their names out loud without something inside me collapsing. I tried once. I stood in front of the wall and whispered each name I could see. I only made it to the sixth one before I dropped to my knees. There was a girl. Her name was Erin Powell, 16. Her father sent us a video. It wasn't supposed to reach me. It was meant for customer support, someone low enough in the chain to discard it. But by accident or fate, it ended up in my inbox. I never watched the whole thing, only a few seconds. Her father sat in front of a bookshelf, holding her journal. His hands were trembling, his eyes red. Behind him, the photo of a smiling girl in a school uniform, bright-eyed, sharp-browed, full of fight. She'd written just days before her collapse. It feels weird sometimes, like my heart stutters when I laugh too hard. But the doctor says it's normal. Dad says I worry too much. I hope he's right. I want to play at the festival this fall. I want to show Coach I'm strong enough to compete. I want to make Mom proud. I closed the video. I deleted it. I told myself I didn't have time. But what I didn't have was courage. Courage is the first casualty of comfort. In the safety of corner offices, with latte foam and conference calls and curated data dashboards, it's easy to think you're making rational choices. But rationality without heart becomes cruelty. Wearing a calm face. I used to say things like, it's a tragedy, yes, but isolated. We'll send flowers, draft a statement, activate legal containment. Language so precise, so sanitized, you forget we were talking about lives. I remember the turning point, the moment death stopped being abstract. We received a lawsuit notice from the family of a man named Peter Lang, 58, school janitor, widowed. He'd gotten the implant as part of a pilot program for low-income seniors. He died while sweeping a hallway. They found him collapsed next to a mop bucket, heart stilled mid-beat, eyes open. His son wrote a letter to our legal team. It was angry, emotional, filled with misspellings and rage. But in one paragraph, just one, there was a sentence that broke something in me. You promised it would make him safer, that he'd live longer, that he'd be okay on his own. You said we could trust you. Now he's cold and alone, and I wasn't there to hold his hand when he left. I reread that line 20 times, and then I did nothing. I took a sip of coffee. I called communications. I approved the legal defense strategy, and death remained faceless. Until I got here, until I entered this room. Here, death has names. It has faces. I see some of them now, not just on the wall, but in the corridors. Figures without shadow, walking memories. Erin, still in her school uniform. Peter, still in his janitor's vest. Tasha, still holding her violin case, unopened. They don't speak. They just appear, not to haunt, not to punish, just to exist, to force me to remember. That's the most devastating thing about this place. There's no judge, no jailer, no punishment in the traditional sense. Only memory, only awareness. The unrelenting weight of knowing not abstractly, but viscerally, spiritually, that I failed them. Not because I intended harm, but because I refused to acknowledge harm when it was inconvenient. That's the cruelty of negligence. It disguises itself as logic, as maturity, as leadership. But in the end, it's just cowardice with a calculator. I try to leave the room. The hallway beyond feels longer than usual. The lights buzz louder. The explosion is coming. I can feel it in my lungs in the way the air thickens like molasses. I press my hand against the wall for balance. And in that moment, right before the fire reaches me again, I see something carved into the steel. They had names. You had numbers. And then the fire takes me. I see him again tonight. He's standing at the end of the corridor, just beyond the flickering light. He doesn't move. He doesn't speak. He only watches me. My second face. That's what I've come to call him. Not a ghost. Not a hallucination. Not some shapeless manifestation of guilt. No. Hess me. Same height. Same broad shoulders. Same jawline tight with tension. Same dark eyes that once looked at boardroom projections like they were prophecies. But there's something wrong, something off. His skin is paler. His smile is too sharp, like a cracked porcelain mask stretched across bone. And his eyes, God, his eyes don't blink. He watches me like I'm a failed experiment. And maybe I am. The first time I saw him, I ran. It was early in the loop, maybe the third or fourth explosion. I was still foolish enough to believe this was a dream, or a trick of the mind, or some neurological punishment conjured by grief and guilt. But he didn't chase me. He never does. He only stands with hands behind his back, like a supervisor inspecting his own failure. Me. Lately, I've begun to approach him. Not out of courage. God, no. But because I have nothing else to lose. Everything in this place is on repeat. The metal groans. The fire returns. The voices whisper. The names on the wall float and multiply. But he is the only variable. And in a world ruled by endless repetition, a variable is a miracle or a warning. Tonight I reach him. For the first time I stand within inches of him. We are mirror images, separated by something. Something invisible, like glass, or time, or the thin veil between denial and truth. I look into his eyes. I expect rage, condemnation, judgment. But there is none, only contempt. Quiet, cold, measured. The kind of contempt only a version of yourself can feel for what you've become. And then he says, in my exact voice, "You thought this was about the people who died." I blink. He tilts his head. It's not. It's about the man who lived, and then he disappears. I collapse, not from fear, but from the weight of the realization. I've been cataloging names, counting deaths, lining them up in a long, neat row of remorse like medals of shame. But I haven't looked at myself. Not really. I've mourned the victims, but I haven't faced the one who chose to keep breathing, who decided to let them die. The one who smiled on camera, who walked out of interviews clean and polished, who went home and slept through sirens and headlines and emails from engineers with shaking hands. That man is still alive, and he wears my face. There's a room in the factory with no walls, just mirrors, an infinite reflection chamber. I don't go there often, but tonight something pulls me toward it. Maybe it's his words. Maybe it's the need to see what he sees. I step inside, and I face myself. There are hundreds of me, thousands, each version lit by dim yellow light, each face a little different. Some younger, some older, some tired, some proud, some broken, all recognizable. And in every reflection, something is missing. Sometimes it's the eye's empty sockets. Sometimes the mother raised like a child's drawing smudged away. Sometimes the heart. I see one version of me standing tall in a three-piece suit, smiling. But where his chest should be, there's only a hollow cavity, wires hanging out like vines. That was me too. I reach out to touch one mirror and the glass ripples. My hand sinks through, and suddenly I'm there, inside the memory it holds. Back in the conference room, the smell of fresh coffee, the soft tapping of fingers on tablet screens, the charts glowing on the wall. A younger me is presenting quarterly growth projections. My voice is confident, polished, deadly. We're ahead of schedule. The launch numbers exceeded expectations. We're projecting a 13.2% increase in recurring users if we hit phase 3 by next month. Applause. I remember this day. We toasted afterward. That night, a 10-year-old named Daniel Bloom collapsed on his front lawn, but we didn't hear about it for 3 days. By then, we were celebrating a new partnership deal. The mirror shatters. M back in the chamber. The reflections are bleeding now. Not blood, but data. Graphs, quotes, emails. Every phrase I use to minimize death. We must remain forward-facing. We can save everyone. Perception is management. Isolate the noise. Noise. That's what I call them. The voices of parents. The articles that tried to warn us. The outlier cases. Noise. The second face returns. This time he doesn't speak. He simply holds out his hand. In it, a mask. My own face. Lifelike. Seamless. Lined with corporate calm. Eyes slightly narrowed in calculated empathy. The same face I wore in interviews. In apologies. In boardrooms. In denial. He presses it to my chest. Not violently. Not cruelly. Just deliberately. And when I look down, the mask has disappeared. It's already on me. I fall to my knees because I realize I never took it off. Not once. Not when Aaron Powell died. Not when Peter Lang collapsed alone. Not when the names began to pile up like snowdrifts I refused to acknowledge. I kept the mask on because it was easier, because it let me pretend I was the hero in a difficult situation instead of the architect of a silent massacre. There is no prison here, no flames licking at my heels, no demons tearing at my skin, only truth. And sometimes truth is the sharpest punishment of all. The factory begins to hum, the prelude to fire. But this time I don't run, I don't hide. I sit, cross-legged on the floor, hands open, and I say out loud for the first time, I knew. The explosion hits, and I welcome it. There was a time I feared consequences. I pictured them as men in suits with folders, as subpoenas, as camera flashes outside glass doors. I imagined headlines, CEO caught in cover-up, Elias facing criminal negligence allegations. I rehearsed statements of contrition in front of the mirror. I thought that when it all came crashing down, there would be a knock at the door. Something loud, official, unmistakable. But no one knocked. There was no trial, no handcuffs, no arrest, no press conference, only silence. And then I disappeared. Not literally. I was still there in meetings, in emails and quarterly reviews, but something left me. Something essential. I remember sitting at my desk a week after the 12th confirmed death, staring at the wood grain, not moving, not breathing deeply, just watching, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. The world didn't collapse. The stock price didn't plummet. No one barged in. They just adjusted, repositioned, managed the message. I became a ghost long before I died. Now here in this place, this unending factory of fire and memory, I understand something I never understood when I was alive. Silence is not absence. It's permission. Every person who didn't speak, every team that revised the report instead of releasing it, Every executive who asked, "Is this really the hill we want to die on?" We weren't just complicit. We were architects. We didn't knock on the door. We locked it from the inside. There's a hallway here that never ends. I walk it when the voices grow too loud, when the weight of names crushes my chest. The hallway is narrow, lined with old-fashioned doors identical, unmarked. They don't open. I've tried them all. Hundreds. Thousands. Each one resists me, like they're holding in some unbearable truth I don't have the right to touch yet. But tonight, one creaks open. Not by my hand. It opens on its own, without warning, as I pass. Inside, a memory. I step into my old office. Perfectly reconstructed, desk immaculate, laptop closed, bookshelf lined with leadership texts I never read past the first chapter. And there, in my chair, is me. Again, the same second face. But this time, he looks older, tired. He wears the same suit I wore during my final shareholder briefing, charcoal gray, soft lapel, the tie knotted just a bit too tightly. He doesn't look up when I enter. He just speaks. "You were waiting for them to come, weren't you?" I say nothing. "You thought someone would stop you, that someone would force you to change course." Still I am silent, but no one knocked, and you took that as permission. He finally lifts his eyes to mine. "You mistook the absence of punishment for the presence of justification." My knees weaken, because he's right. I think back to that last board meeting. We'd already passed 20 deaths by then. Public suspicion was rising. One regional distributor had pulled out. There was tension in the air, the kind that makes even seasoned executives sweat beneath deodorant and smiles. I walked in calm, smiled, assured them, "Well, weather this. Trust me. No one wants a witch hunt. Everyone has skeletons. Ours just made the news first." They chuckled, they nodded. No one challenged me, and afterward I sat alone in my office for an hour staring at the door, waiting. I imagined the Attorney General bursting in, or a whistleblower reporter, or even Dr. Holden, her eyes burning with moral fury. But the hallway remained still. The only thing I heard was the low hum of the air conditioner. Back in the room, my second face stands. He walks to the bookshelf and pulls out a binder I don't recognize. It's plain, unlabeled, thick. He hands it to me. Inside photos. Not of the victims, not of the team, but of me. Candids, still shots, surveillance-like captures of my face during meetings, calls, hallway conversations. Always calm, always composed, even in moments when I knew people were dying. My expression didn't change. The face of a man who had trained himself too well, who no longer needed to hide remorse because he no longer felt it deeply enough to disturb the surface. I drop the binder. It thuds like a coffin lid. He speaks again. "You built a company around silence, around waiting, around the hope that someone else would take the fall. But no one came, because they were waiting too, waiting for you." The room begins to shake. Lights flicker. The hum returns louder now. The factory is preparing to explode again. But this time, the second face doesn't vanish. He walks toward me, stands chest to chest, whispers. "When there's no knock at the door, it doesn't mean you're innocent. It means the world has stopped expecting better from you." And then he steps into me. Not metaphorically, I feel him enter. A second heartbeat, a second weight behind my eyes. When the fire comes this time, it isn't just hot. It's silent. No roar, no scream, just light, pure, white, blinding. And for the first time, I don't wake up immediately. There's a pause, a liminal space, like the factory is watching me, waiting, asking, "Will you knock now?" I don't answer. Not yet, because I don't know how. But I know I can't keep waiting for someone else to do it, because the truth is simple. No one knocks, not for people like me. We knock on ourselves, or we burn forever in rooms no one sees. I found it by accident, a hatch in the floor, flush with the metal, nearly invisible beneath a thin layer of ash. No markings, no lock, just a square of silence embedded in the chaos. It shouldn't have been there. It walked that corridor 1,000 times, burned, broken, crawling. But tonight, the floor hummed beneath my feet like a hidden heart. Calling me, I knelt and pressed my hand against it. The hatch hissed, opened inward, and I descended. The ladder was long, cold. The air grew thick not with smoke, but with something heavier. Memory. At the bottom, I found a room unlike the others. No gears, no machinery, no walls of names, no flame, just darkness. In the center stood a black cube, 5 feet tall, featureless, immovable. It pulsed softly like it was breathing. I circled it once, then again. No markings, no buttons, no keyholes, just presence. Like it was waiting for me, like it had always been waiting. My breath fogged the air. My hands trembled. I reached out, fingertips grazing the surface. It was warm, almost human. And when I touched it fully, it spoke, not aloud, inside, directly into my mind. Welcome, Elias. You've arrived at your black box. The voice wasn't mine. It wasn't human. It was clinical, with no emotion, no cruelty, just facts wrapped in breath. I tried to step back. I couldn't. My feet rooted. My vision blurred. The box pulsed brighter. And then it opened. Not physically, mentally. A seam tore through my mind. Not a memory, not a dream, a recording. I was back in a private meeting room. Glass walls, a laptop open to a spreadsheet, and across from me, Ethan Vale, former chief ethics officer. He was speaking, his voice urgent but quiet. Elias, the anomaly rate is climbing. You need to look at these charts. It's not noise anymore. I remember this moment. I'd buried it. I was already thinking of our investor call, of how to word a reassurance, of optics. We can't afford a scare, Id said. Ethan leaned forward. We're not talking about scare. We're talking about death. But I waved him off. No definitive link. Correlation isn't causation. He stared at me for a long time. Then he said something I chose to forget until now. You're not making a decision. You're making a gamble. The memory dissolved. Another unfolded in its place. Dr. Holden, late at night, her voice cracking as she said, Elias, if you don't act now, people will die. You can quantify this away. I turned away from her, told her I appreciated her passion, told her the engineers would investigate, told her to rest. And when she left, I never followed up. The black box kept opening. More memories, more choices. Not the big ones, the small ones. The moments in between, the seconds when I could have acted. The days when I stared at inboxes and chose not to read. The meetings where I nodded instead of objected. The weekends when I went home and opened wine instead of reopening the report. Every silence was a decision. The voice again, inside me. Every delay was an act. Every look away was a signature. I wanted to scream, to tear the box apart, but I couldn't move, because I knew this was me, not metaphor, not symbolism. The black box was me, the flight recorder of a human life, the archive of every unspoken word, every ignored warning, every heartbeat that stayed steady while others stopped. There was one last memory, a hallway, me standing beside a man I didn't remember at first. He was quiet, dressed plainly, holding a folder I never opened. I looked at him, smiled, dismissed him with a polite nod. But the folder, I see it now, clearer than before. Internal report. Direct causation confirmed. Emergency recall recommended. Dated 2 days before the mass casualty leak. I never opened it. I'd left for a speaking engagement in London that morning. I dropped to my knees, not out of pain, out of confirmation. There it is, the exact moment. Not the first error, not the first casualty, not the first lie, but the moment when all the dots had finally connected, clearly, undeniably in writing, and I had looked away. Not because I didn't know, but because I did, and I chose the flight. The room begins to shake. The black box flashes, not threateningly, not cruelly, just honestly. You wanted justice to find you, but justice is not a thing that knocks. It waits inside, and with that, the cube dissolves. Not into light, but into mirrors. Hundreds, all around me, and in every one I am alone. The ladder is gone, the fire will come, but not yet. This time I am left to sit in the black room, surrounded by reflections that speak without words, not to punish me, but to make me stay, to make me remember, to make me sit with the weight of who I've been. And for the first time since I arrived in this place, I realize there is no escape, only understanding. They appear when the factory is quiet, right after the flames die down, right before the alarms start again. In that strange stillness, when the metal breathes and the air hangs heavy with soot and sorrow. Children, they don't speak, they don't scream, they don't cry, they just exist. Watching me, always watching. The first time I saw them, I didn't understand what I was seeing. I crawled out of a collapsed tunnel, my skin still blistered from the last detonation. Smoke trailed behind me like a guilty ghost. And there they were, a boy and a girl, maybe 10, maybe younger, standing hand in hand near a ruined conveyor belt, clean, whole, untouched by the fire. At first, I thought they were hallucinations, fragments of memory twisted by pain. But their eyes, they weren't imagined. They were real, sharp, deep, older than they had any right to be. Eyes that didn't ask for justice, didn't seek revenge, didn't burn with fury, just recognition. Since then, they've returned. Not always the same, not always in groups. Sometimes it's one child sitting on the edge of a vat, sometimes three, pacing silently down a hall, sometimes a pair, tracing their fingers along the walls, reading invisible names I can see. And they never speak, they never cry, they never blink. There's something unbearable about a child who doesn't cry. Crying is life, it's motion, it's demand. It's proof that something inside still wants to be heard, still believes someone will listen. But these children are beyond that. Not in anger, in resignation. They know no one's coming, because I didn't. I remember the reports. The youngest fatality, Daniel Bloom, 10 years old. His parents were hesitant about the implant. He'd been born with a rare heart condition. Neural pulse was supposed to help regulate sudden stress spikes, keep his pulse steady during physical activity. His doctor called it preventative reassurance. He collapsed during recess, face down in a patch of gravel. No warning, no convulsion, just gone. The device had surged. A brief voltage spike, undetected by the firmware. A known anomaly. We flagged the error weeks earlier, added it to the patch notes for future optimization. Never paused distribution. There's a boy who appears to me now more than the others. He never changes. Same sneakers, one lace untied, red t-shirt with a faded cartoon on it, dark hair that falls over his left eye. He doesn't smile, doesn't frown, doesn't blink. He only watches. And when I try to speak, when I try to say, "I'm sorry," or "I knew," he turns away. Not in disdain, in disinterest. As if words mean nothing here. As if he's heard them all before. One night I follow him, past the broken elevators, down a corridor that pulses with dim red light, through doors that shouldn't open, but do just for him. And at the end, we reach a room I've never seen. A classroom. Metal desks warped with heat, a blackboard half burnt, with chalk still clinging to one corner. He sits at a desk in the front row and waits. I sit behind him, afraid to speak. On the board, new writing appears, scratched in by unseen hands. "Why didn't you stop it?" I open my mouth. Nothing comes. The boy doesn't turn. Another sentence appears. "We told you. You read it. You knew." Yes, we did. So many letters from parents. So many testimonials. So many early users saying they felt off-reporting dizziness, blurred vision, a strange pressure in their skulls. We cataloged them, ranked them, dismissed the lowest percentile, called it subjective variance. Another sentence, you called us noise. My hands shake, because they're right. That was the term, the internal label for reports that fell outside the threshold for action. Noise not officially indicative of systemic error. A catch-all tag, convenient, cold, deadly. The boy finally turns. He looks at me, and this time his eyes aren't blank. They are full of everything hell never become, of questions no child should ever have to ask, of a life unlived, not because of disease, not because of fate, but because I chose not to listen. I want to scream. I want to tear my skin off and build a time machine from my bones. But none of that would matter. Not to him, not to them. There's a saying I once heard at a leadership conference. A good leader makes hard decisions. A great leader makes the right ones. I used to think that was just semantics. Now I see the chasm between the two. Hard decisions are convenient shields. They let you feel brave while doing harm. They let you rename harm as necessity. But the right decision, that requires discomfort, requires sacrifice, requires listening to the children before they stop crying. The boy gets up, walks to the door, stops, looks at me one last time, and says softly, "You didn't forget us." It's not praise, not absolution, just fact. A quiet recognition that memory, even painful, is a form of witness. And then he's gone. I remain seated. The fire won't come yet. The explosion can wait. Because tonight, the factory has given me something worse than fire. It has given me silence filled with children who do not cry. And I must sit inside that silence until I understand what it means to have heard and still not listen. I no longer scream. That part of me, the one that flailed, cursed, cried, died somewhere around explosion 470. Now I simply wait. I feel it before it happens. The way the air thickens, the way the pipes hum, the way the dust falls upward against gravity, like time reversing for just a moment. And then the fire, the windless roar, the sensation of being torn apart and reassembled all at once. Except now I don't reassemble entirely. Each time the factory detonates, a piece of me fails to come back. They don't tell you that in punishment fantasies. They say, "You'll pay forever." They say, "You'll burn endlessly." They don't say, "You'll slowly become a ghost of the man you were, and eventually you won't know what part of you is real anymore." I don't remember the sound of my own voice. Not the real one. Not the one that gave press briefings and investor presentations and birthday toasts at shareholder retreats. I don't remember what I used to eat, or if I liked jazz, or how many times I'd been in love. I only remember the number, 0.47% and the count. This is explosion 1002. I'm not sure how I know that. No clocks here, no dates, just an instinct, a tick. Like the factory is inside me now, and I've learned its rhythm better than my heartbeat. There's no ceremony, no change in script, just the explosion, and then I wake up again, exactly where I started. Sometimes standing, sometimes crawling, sometimes on my back, staring up at rusted pipes that drip cold memory onto my face. But something is different this time. It's subtle, like the difference between a heartbeat and an echo. The fire felt softer, not merciful, not forgiving, just slower, as if it hesitated before taking me. And now as I rise, my bones aching with memory, I notice something else. The second face is not here. He's always shown up by now. After every 100 or so detonations, he appears, sometimes to speak, sometimes to offer riddles or mirrors or masks. But not this time. And somehow, that feels worse, because now I don't know if I'm progressing or regressing. Maybe I've exhausted him. Maybe I've stopped being worth the reflection. Or maybe I've become him. I walk through steam-filled hallways, past conveyor belts that grind without purpose, over catwalks that hang above bottomless darkness. My body moves like it remembers, even if I no longer do. I stop at a familiar door. It's labeled 1A. It never opens. But tonight it does. Inside a boardroom. Glass walls, long table, 12 chairs, every seat filled by me. Each version is slightly different. One in a crisp suit, tapping a pen. One with a 5 o'clock shadow, scrolling on a phone. One with blood on his collar. One with tears on his cheeks. One staring straight at me with dead eyes. They all stop what they're doing when I enter, and one of them, the one in the center seat, speaks. Motion to approve. Continued silence. A pause. 11 hands rise. Unanimous. I step forward. No. My voice cracks. I barely recognize it. It sounds rusty, like it hasn't been used in years. But I say it again. No. They all look at me. The man in the center nods. Motion rejected. And with that, one by one, the other versions of me vanish, chair by chair, like shadows receding under truth's slow dawn. Only the center seat remains filled. He stares at me and says, "Then what now, Elias?" I don't know. I'm still learning how to speak without spinning, how to feel without justifying, how to see without editing. But I step closer. I place my hands on the table, and I answer, "I won't forget." He nods once and disappears. The room fades. I'm back in the hallway, alone. But I feel something I haven't felt in 1001 explosions. Weight. The weight of being whole again, even if wholeness means holding every shard I once tried to hide. And then the alarm. Low, distant. The fire is coming. I don't run. I stand, arms at my side, face toward the light, and I whisper, "Let it come. I'm still here. The room shouldn't exist." I've walked these halls 1,000 times, seen every molten corridor, every collapsed catwalk, every conveyor belt running to nowhere. But this door, it's new, heavy, black, twice my height, and carved with symbols I almost recognize. They aren't letters. They're decisions, symbols that look like checkboxes, silence, market graphs, warning flags, and a fingerprint. Mine. No handle, no keypad, just an emptiness that seems to hum, waiting. I step forward, and it opens. Inside, darkness. Not the absence of light, but the presence of something deeper. The kind of dark you don't see through, but feel pressing against your ribs. The door shuts behind me. The sound is final. I walk forward, and the voices begin. They're not angry. They're not loud. They are measured, calm, familiar. Let's remain focused on deliverables. Public concern is a separate track from strategic goals. Perception is reality. Ethics must align with shareholder confidence. I know these voices. They were mine and theirs. The council. Not a real council, not officially, but that's what I called them, the 12 executive minds who shaped every major decision at Elias Biotech. We never needed votes. We moved with nods, with silence, with the invisible understanding of people who knew the system too well to challenge it. And now they sit before me. Their chairs rise from the dark like monuments. 12 thrones in a circle, each seat filled by a figure in shadow, unmoving, faceless. But I know who they are. One strokes an invisible beard Logan Reyes, Chief Risk Officer. One taps a silver pen May Whitner, VP of Corporate Affairs. One adjusts his tie Simon Raddick, former COO. They are not speaking directly to me. They speak through me, through memory, through residue. Their words leak like old poison through the seams of my spine. What's our exposure? Can we spin this as a communication failure? Delay the press release until after earnings. Send condolences. Do not admit fault. They were the machinery behind my silence. No one ever said, "Let them die." That's the trick. It was always implied, buried beneath language so polished it gleamed. Low-priority risk clusters, non-critical malfunction patterns, mitigation in progress, a factory of phrases, all designed to keep the machine moving, all designed to sound like concern while meaning nothing. I step into the center of the circle. They turn toward me as one. No faces, only masks. Each mask shaped like a different emotion. Calm, worry, pride, neutrality. But none of them match the truth. You're not real, I say. No one answers. I raise my voice. Your shadows, echoes, justifications I kept feeding myself. Still silence. And then one of them rises. Tall, imposing, wearing the mask of reason. He speaks. We were you. You were us. And you still are. I shake my head. I know better now. The mask tilts slightly. Do you? What would you have done, Elias, if the numbers had come in lower? If the deaths had remained scattered? If the media hadn't connected the dots? The figure steps closer. Would you still have stopped the line? Would you still have pulled the product? I want to say yes, but the truth won't let me, because the answer is probably not. Not unless I was cornered. Not unless the consequences threatened me. Another figure rises. This one wears the mask of strategy. She speaks in my voice. You didn't kill them. You managed risk. Another chimes in finance. Your duty was to shareholders, to innovation, to the greater good. I clench my fists. No. But they don't stop. You prevented panic. You protected 1,000 jobs. You acted with the data available. They surround me. You did what any leader would do. You did what every leader does. I drop to my knees, because the worst part is they're not wrong. Not by the world's standards, not by the standards of the game we all agreed to play. Quarter by quarter, point by point, survival by silence. But that world, that game killed people. And we just kept clapping when the stock went up. The center of the room glows suddenly. A projection appears, names, charts, memos, emails with subject lines like action needed, early fatality trends. Draft response language, minimize culpability. Neural pulse, batch number 7 delay, QA results. It all floats around me, an orbit of cowardice dressed as competence. I scream now, not in pain, but in defiance. I remember every single one of you. I remember every time I nodded instead of spoke. I remember when I told myself, this is the cost of innovation, but the cost was never ours, was it? They pause, a crack forms in the floor, and from that crack, light. The council begins to tremble, not in fear, in dissolution. They are not being punished. They are being understood. And the more I see them, the more I own them, the less they control me. I stand, raise my voice one last time. You were the echo chamber I built. But I won't sit in silence anymore. The masks fall, the chairs crumble, the room collapses into itself like a star folding in shame, and I am alone, back in the hallway, one hand on the wall, breath shaking, but the fire doesn't come. Not yet. This time the factory lets me walk in silence, because I've dismantled something far more dangerous than a machine. I've dismantled the part of me that kept pretending this wasn't real. It wasn't there before. I would have noticed. I know every inch of this corridor, every rusted pipe, every dented panel, every flickering light. But now a line. Thin, jagged, barely visible. Like a scar the wall had hidden for 1,000 explosions, only to reveal it now. I don't move at first. The factory has never changed, not in 1,002 detonations. Its rules were clear. Repeat, remember, burn. But now it's different. Now something's breaking. I approach slowly. The crack runs from floor to ceiling, crooked as lightning frozen in mid-flash. It hums, not loudly like a breath behind a door. I reach out. My fingers stop just short of the surface. Because what if this isn't a way out? What if this is something worse? A trap, a test, a final punishment wrapped in the illusion of mercy. But then again, what isn't? For the first time, I think, maybe I'm not meant to stay here forever. Not because I've been forgiven, not because I've suffered enough, but because I've finally seen enough. The factory never wanted my pain. It wanted my truth. And truth, like pressure, creates fractures. So I touch it, and the wall moves. Not explodes, not crumbles. Moves like breath expanding, like a lung inhaling time. The crack widens, just an inch, just enough for light to leak through. White, not the sterile white of hospitals, not the blinding white of fire. This is soft, warm, like morning sunlight on cold skin. It touches me, and for the first time since this began, I feel real. I take a step back, not because I'm afraid, but because I'm overwhelmed. Grief I expected, fire I understood. But hope? Hope is foreign here. Hope is dangerous because it whispers, maybe you've earned release, but what if I haven't? The factory groans behind me. The air shifts. Machinery stirs. The loop prepares again. Explosion 1003 is coming, but the crack is still open, still breathing, still inviting. I sit down in front of it. I don't step through. Not yet, because I need to know what it means first. I press my ear to the wall beside the fracture. I expect silence, but I hear voices, faint, distant, layered like overlapping echoes. Not screams, not names, just one word whispered over and over. Speak. I recoil, because that's the one thing I haven't truly done. Not here, not in the council chamber, not even to the children. I've remembered. I've relived. I've acknowledged. But I haven't spoken. I haven't used my voice to confess. I've whispered apologies in the dark, but I haven't shouted them into the light. I thought memory was enough, but maybe it's not. Maybe truth only matters when it's spoken aloud. The floor begins to tremble. Time is short. The explosion is coming. I rise to my feet and face the crack, and I do the thing I've feared most. I speak. My name is Elias Granger. I was the CEO of Alaris Biotech. I oversaw the Neural Pulse project. I knew there were risks. I ignored the warnings. I let people die to protect perception. I justified it with numbers. I defended it with silence. I told myself the cost was acceptable. I called grief noise. I turned victims into statistics. I turned fear into strategy, and I lived with it until I didn't. The wall shudders. The crack glows brighter. I step closer. I won't ask to be forgiven. I won't ask to be released. But I won't lie anymore. Not here. Not to you. Not to myself. Something shifts in the air. The whole factory holds its breath. The lights stop flickering. The conveyor belts fall still. Even the fire, wherever it waits, goes quiet. I lean my forehead against the edge of the crack, and I say the last words I never dared say aloud. I chose silence, and then the wall opens. Not violently, not dramatically. It just parts. A gap wide enough for a man to walk through. On the other side, a hallway, clean, empty, still. Not a paradise. Not an escape. Just unknown. Behind me, the factory stirs. The loop wants to begin again. But this time, I don't wait for the fire. I step through the crack, and the wall seals shut behind me. The hallway is too quiet. No steam, no fire, no alarms. Just stillness so heavy it presses against my chest like grief with form. The walls are pale gray, smooth, clean, unfamiliar. For the first time in over 1,000 detonations, I'm in a space untouched by the factory's ritual violence. No gears, no smoke, no loops, only silence. And a hum beneath the floor, soft and rhythmic, like a distant heartbeat. I follow it, not because I trust it, but because it's different. And in this place, different is sacred. I turn a corner and enter a room that wasn't there before. Small, square, Bare except for one thing, a radio. Old-fashioned, wooden, dials worn smooth by time. It sits on a pedestal in the center of the room like an altar. A single note is taped to its side. Turn it on, but don't interrupt. My hand hovers over the dial. I know what's coming, and I know I can't look away this time. So I turn the knob. The radio crackles, hisses, and then a voice. A woman, soft-spoken, quivering slightly. Hi, my name's Maria. My husband Peter died last year. He was 61. He loved crossword puzzles and jazz music. Every Sunday morning, he'd make pancakes shaped like animals for our grandkids. Even after the surgery, he insisted on dancing with me in the kitchen, just slow, holding me close. And then one morning, he just didn't get up. They said his heart stopped in his sleep, that it was peaceful, but I wasn't there. And I think he was scared. I hope he knew I loved him. I hope he didn't feel alone. The broadcast fades, static again. I want to turn the dial to flee the sound of the unbearable human cost, but the note said not to interrupt, so I wait. The second voice is younger, male, clipped, shaky, name's Tyler. My mom had the implant, said it made her feel calmerless, anxious. I didn't really get it, but she said she was sleeping better. One day she was driving me to school and she just stopped, like her hands dropped off the wheel. Her head fell forward. I thought she was joking at first. I screamed, tried to wake her. The car kept rolling. I was 13. I still dream about her slumped over. I still hear the blinker ticking. I grip the edge of the pedestal. Nails biting wood. But the voices keep coming. Raj. My sister Jill was 29. She'd just started her own bakery. She tested the implant as part of a wellness trial, said it helped with migraines. 3 months in, she collapsed during a shift, dough still on her hands. Her co-worker thought she was fainting from stress. But it wasn't stress. It was the signal spike. I read the report. They called it non-systemic instability. I call it murder. Another pause, another shift. Each voice enters like a breath held too long. Each name, a person the spreadsheets erased. My daughter Erin, 16. I found her journal after she died. She was scared. She'd written about the feeling in her chest, like something fluttering wrong. She asked her doctor about it. They told her to hydrate more. I trusted them. I trusted you. She died in gym class. Her friends thought she was faking it at first, a drama kid being dramatic. By the time the coach realized she was blue, my baby was blue. My knees buckle. I slide to the floor. The room doesn't change. The light doesn't flicker. The broadcast continues because pain doesn't wait for permission. My name is Lena. I was one of the first testers. I survived, barely. I live with seizures now. No lawsuit, no answers, just this noise in my head. They say it's not related, that it's psychological. But I know. My body remembers what your product did. I used to believe in companies like yours. Now I watch the news and wonder how many people are suffering like me quietly. Alone. Forgotten. Mason. I was 12 when my dad died. I didn't talk for 6 months. I started again when I realized no one was going to talk about what happened. So I did. I made a podcast. It only had 5 episodes. No one listened. I stopped, but I still have the recordings. Maybe you'll play them again someday. The voices fade, the static returns, and then my own name, spoken by someone I don't recognize. Elias Granger. Her tone isn't angry. It isn't reverent. It's honest, exhausted. You didn't have to be perfect. You didn't have to save the world. You just had to listen. But you chose silence, and silence doesn't stay silent forever. A click. The radio dies. I sit on the floor for what could be minutes, could be hours. There is no time here. Only weight. The weight of stories. I used to think data mattered most. That impact was best measured in aggregated trends. That pain could be predicted, plotted, projected. But this is the truth. The broadcast didn't list numbers. It listed lives. There's a screen now on the wall. It wasn't there before. It lights up and a single word appears. Ready? I don't answer, because I'm not. But I stand, because I must. I walk to the door opposite the radio. It opens. And on the other side, the hallway is not empty. A figure waits, small, still. The boy with the red shirt and untied sneaker. Daniel Bloom. He doesn't speak. He just looks at me. And for the first time, I feel something I haven't allowed myself to feel since I arrived here. Gratitude, not for forgiveness, but for the chance to witness. The stories weren't punishments. They were a gift, a chance to hear what I refused to hear while they were alive, a chance to carry their voices in mine. I nod. Daniel nods back, and we walk together into the next room. Everything is white, no shadows, no walls, not really just endless white in all directions, like I've stepped into the space between breaths. I look down. No floor. But I don't fall. I simply am. Floating. Standing. Existing. And beside me, still as the stillness itself, stands Daniel. He's not watching me anymore. He's watching the white. Like he knows what comes next. Like he's seen it already. The silence here is different. It's not hollow. It's full. Full of memory, of pressure, of presence. Here I can hear my own heartbeat. Each breath is too loud. Every footstep echoes into eternity. I take a few steps forward. The light doesn't change. The space doesn't respond. But then I see it. A wall, no texture, no door, no seams, just flat, white endlessness. And yet somehow I know what it is. This is me, not metaphorically. This wall is everything I refuse to face. Every conversation avoided, every choice dressed in corporate language, every truth blurred into strategy. It isn't here to punish me, it's here to listen. And I have to speak, not aloud, but honestly. A single line appears across the wall. If you could go back, what would you do differently? I stare at it, not blinking. The words burn into my eyes, into my spine, and I don't answer right away, because I don't want to lie. And it's tempting to say everything the world wants to hear. I would have pulled the product. I would have blown the whistle. I would have risked the company. I would have saved them. But the truth, the real truth, I wasn't brave then. I was careful, calculated, cowardly in a suit. So instead I whisper, I would have listened, and then I would have said something, out loud, publicly, not just in conference rooms. I would have stopped protecting myself and started protecting them. Even if it cost me. The line on the wall fades. Another takes its place. Why didn't you? And I answer without hesitation. Because I thought survival was success. The wall glows brighter. More sentences appear, like interrogations written in light. Did you feel guilty when the first person died? Why did you wait? Did you love your company more than people? Was your silence worth the price? Each one pierces. Each one draws blood without leaving wounds. I respond to them all, not defensively, not proudly, just truthfully, because this place doesn't want apologies. It wants witness. Finally, the questions stop. The wall goes blank, and then a single phrase appears. Not a question, a statement. They don't hate you. I sink to my knees, not in relief, not in joy, but in sheer emotional collapse, because I didn't realize how much I feared that. Not the fire, not the explosion, not the repetition, but hatred. That these children, these parents, these siblings, these strangers whose lives I intersected so fatally might be standing behind the veil, loathing me. But the wall says they don't, not because I deserve love, but because they aren't here for revenge. They're here to be remembered. I place my hand against the white. It's warm, like skin, like something living. And a final line appears beneath my palm. Are you ready to carry them? Not to flee, not to be freed, but to carry. their names, their stories, their truths. The burden I once tried to suppress with numbers and press releases, now it will live inside me forever. And I nod. Yes, I say. The wall pulses, flickers, begins to fade. And as it vanishes, I see not a door, but a mirror. I approach it. My reflection waits. It's not the version in the press photos, not the one from the council meetings, not the one who wore suits like armor and smiled for cameras. This man is older, weathered, eyes sunken but awake, shoulders curved not from defeat, but from bearing something finally worth carrying. He nods at me, and I nod back. The mirror dissolves. The white recedes, and Daniel is gone. Not vanished, just released, returned to where he belongs, and I am alone again. But for the first time, I do not feel lost. There's no door this time, no corridor, no glow, no invitation, just blackness, like someone turned off the world. No sound, no hum, no echo of fire preparing to strike. I'm floating again, but differently now. Before, it was suspension. Now it feels like weightlessness, not escape, not relief. Something in between, a breath held at the edge of an answer, and then a spotlight. It appears below me, sharp and circular, a small patch of glowing ground, as if the factory itself is saying, "Step here, speak now." So I do. I descend, not falling, just gently lowering, until I'm standing in the center of that circle, bare, unarmed, unmasked. And I know without being told this is the trial. There is no judge, no prosecution, no audience of the dead, only silence, but not absence. There's a presence here, a wait, a listening, the kind that exists when you know you are the only one who can answer, and the only one who will remember if you lie. A voice emerges, not from outside, but from inside my chest. My own voice. The one I forgot after so many apologies wrapped in strategy, but now it doesn't ask for applause. It doesn't perform. It asks, "Elias Granger, you accept responsibility for every life your silence touched?" I don't hesitate. Yes. Without condition? Yes. Without excuse? Yes. And it hurts. Because this isn't for show. There's no reporter here. No stakeholder. No redemption narrative. Just me and what I've done. Did you profit from those lives? I nod. Did you lie? Yes. Did you let others lie while you remain silent? Yes. Did you ever believe it would stop on its own? Yes. And did you ever truly try to stop it? Silence. And then no. The light above me flickers. Not as punishment, as truth. Every question is a chisel. Every answer, a crack in the stone. And this trial isn't carving a sentence. It's carving a confession. Do you believe you deserve forgiveness? I pause. That question isn't rhetorical. It wants an answer. And I give it. No. But I believe they deserve my honesty. Do you think honesty is enough? I breathe. No. But it's what's left. The circle beneath me grows brighter. My own shadow stretches long and thin across the black floor until it vanishes into the distance. And then for the first time, a second spotlight appears. Empty. A space across from me. Another voice emerges. Feminine. Measured. Calm. But tired. We waited. I know that voice. It's Dr. Holden, or a memory of her, or perhaps a fragment of my mind that preserved her truth when I ignored it. She steps into the light. No accusation in her eyes. Just grief and dignity. You didn't listen. I nod. I was scared. Of what? Losing everything. So you let us lose everyone? The words aren't cruel. They are factual. And that is what cuts the deepest. Another spotlight. Another figure. Ethan Vale, Chief Ethics Officer. His mouth is tight. You turned your back. I thought it was too late. It's never too late to speak. It's just harder. You chose easy. I know. Say it. I chose easy. Louder. I chose easy. The darkness reverberates. Then a child's voice. Daniel, you knew. I nod. He steps forward, holds out something small, a model, plastic, a toy version of the implant. It hums softly in his palm. I take it. It's heavier than it should be, and warm. Keep it, he says, so you don't forget. The spotlights fade, the figures vanish, and I am alone again. But not the same. This trial had no sentence. Because it didn't need one, I carry it with me now, in my bones, in my voice, in the shape of my name. I look up. A light appears far above me, a pinhole in the dark. A way out? Maybe. But it doesn't matter, because escape is not the point anymore. The point is knowing, and carrying, and speaking. The factory will always live inside me, but now so will they. The factory is quiet again, not dead, just waiting, like it knows I've returned, like it's aware this is the end. I walk its halls one last time. No fire, no echo, no hum of the machines grinding an endless rehearsal of destruction. Only stillness and memory. The pipes are warm under my fingers. The steel has stopped trembling. The floor no longer pulses with threat. It almost feels like it's holding its breath. And I know why. This is the final one. Explosion 1003, the last loop, the last detonation. Not because I've escaped, but because there's nothing left to burn. Everything that could be reduced to ash inside me has already been scorched. My ambition, my pride, my detachment, my deflections, my false sense of nobility. The fire has taken it all, loop by loop. This time it comes not as a punishment, but as a release. I step into the corridor where it always happens, the epicenter, the place where it all began, and ended, and repeated. There's no countdown, no siren, only a soft vibration beneath my feet. I kneel, not in surrender, but in reverence, because the fire this time, it's an enemy. It's a witness to who I was, who I am, who I chose to become by telling the truth. I close my eyes, not to brace for pain, but to speak. One last time. I don't want forgiveness. I don't want absolution, but I will carry them, every name, every voice, every life. I will carry them into whatever comes next, not because I deserve to, but because I must. The explosion begins, but it's not like before. No tearing, no screaming metal, no heat ripping through muscle and memory. Just light, white, soft, silent. A warmth that begins in the center of my chest and expands outward. I feel it crawl into my limbs, into my spine, into the corners of my being where fear once hid. And I realize I'm not dying. Not really. I'm dissolving into the light, into the names, into the stories, into something true. Flashes dance across my vision. Not images, but moments. Daniel's quiet gaze, Dr. Holden's trembling voice, Mariah's radio story, Aaron's final journal entry. My own silence. They pass through me like echoes returning home. I weep, not out of regret, but out of gratitude for the chance to finally feel everything, all at once, without flinching, and then stillness. The factory is gone. No fire, no smoke, no memory of metal or circuitry or repetition, just silence, but not the silence of guilt, the silence of completion, the silence of a story finished. I do not wake up. There is no next loop, no floor, no ceiling, just a gentle drift as if I've become something else entirely. And maybe I have. Maybe death this time isn't a restart. Maybe it's a release from pretending, from defending, from branding, from calculating how much truth a man can afford to tell. Now there is no affording, no strategy, no mask, just this, a name, a weight, a vow. I feel something open in me, not pain, just space, For them, for the ones I failed, for the ones I heard too late, for the voices I now carry like sacred scripture in my bones. Their stories will not fade because they're written in me forever. This is the final death, not of body, not of soul, but of the man who refused to listen. And in his place, only memory, only truth, only a silence that no longer hides anything. Are you listening? I don't mean that politely. I mean, are you truly listening? To the quiet voice inside you that says, something isn't right. To the uneasy weight behind a colleague's hesitation. To the engineer's trembling hands. To the numbers that don't make sense. To the silence that begs you to speak. Because I didn't. And it cost everything. I was Elias Granger, CEO, visionary, strategist, leader. That's what they called me. That's what I called myself. But I was something else too. A man who built his success on the backs of those too small to be noticed by quarterly projections. And when the warnings came, I heard them. I read them. I understood them. And still I said nothing. Now, in this place beyond places, in this realm where every echo is a memory and every silence is a scar, I offer this final message not as apology, not as confession, but as truth. To those still alive, to those still choosing, you will be praised for your caution. You will be rewarded for prioritizing profit. You will be admired for your composure, your confidence, your ability to stay on message. But there will come a day quiet, unmarked, easily ignored when you see the fracture. A moment when you know something is wrong, not factually, not statistically, but deeply, humanly. That moment is the fulcrum of your entire future. What you do with that awareness, how you respond to that whisper, will define who you are when no one is looking. They won't come knocking. The world won't always punish you for staying silent, but you will. And it won't be with fire or jail or headlines. It will be with the sound of children who do not cry, with the weight of names you never bothered to learn, with the echo of your own voice saying, "It's not my responsibility." That sentence is the beginning of every quiet disaster. Here's what I know now. Ethical failure doesn't begin with evil. It begins with convenience. Cowardice wears the face of professionalism. Silence is never neutral. It always chooses a side. And numbers don't save you. They only hide you until it's too late. I once believed legacy was defined by impact. Now I know legacy is defined by who remembers your silence and who had to die for it. If you're reading this or hearing this or standing at your own crack in the wall, speak, even if it costs you, especially if it costs you, because your voice, unlike mine, might still make a difference. I am Elias Granger. I was the CEO who ignored the warning, but you don't have to be. Thanks for watching the whole video. Please give me a like and subscribe to the channel to watch more interesting stories.